So, in regard to the millennial kingdom, I believe it is going to be a literal millennial kingdom where Jesus is literally going to reign on this earth for 1,000 years, while Satan is locked up for 1,000 years. That is talked about in Revelation chapter 20. But in Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 14 and 15, we get a lot of information that shines some light on this topic. And so let's talk about it real fast. In Jeremiah 16, verse 14, it says, "Therefore, behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord lives who brought up the children of Israel from the land of Egypt." And so we'll stop there for a second because we need to unpack it a little bit. Because it says the days are coming. The days are coming. They're not here yet. The days are coming. This is what they are going to be saying. But right now we are told what they do say, because the Jewish people, what their big thing back in the Old Testament is that the Lord lives. They say the Lord lives who brought the children up out of the land of Egypt. And Egypt is their thing that they kind of like put all their eggs in that basket. That is a huge staple to the Jewish people today. And so that is what they say today. But those days are going to go away, and there are going to be coming days where they are going to be saying something different. But today they are saying the Lord lives who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. That's what they say today. So those days are going to be no more. And then in verse 15, it tells us what they are going to say. So they're not going to say this anymore, but the Lord lives who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands where he had driven them. So they are no longer going to say what they say today about Egypt, but they are going to say that the Lord lives who brought us out of all of the lands from all across the world, and they are all back into the promised land. And then it goes down here, it says, "For I will bring them back into their land, which I gave to their fathers." And so now we're talking about the land here. And so the land is the focal point. They are going to be brought back into the land. Before, it was all about Egypt, but here in the future, they're going to be talking about how they're all back in the land from all across the world. And then God says that he brings up the Abrahamic covenant where he says they're going to be back in their land, which I gave to their fathers. Now, who were the fathers of the Jewish people? Well, who was the land? The land was promised to their fathers, but who were their fathers? Well, this is where it's important to understand Genesis, because in Genesis, you are given the Abrahamic covenant. In Genesis chapter 12, it's reiterated in multiple places. Genesis 15, 17, you have the Abrahamic covenant given to Abraham. It was then passed down to Isaac, and then it was given to Jacob. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the fathers that this was promised to. And so it's all talking about Israel, because Israel is going to be given this land, and they were promised the land. They were given it to, the land was given to them, but the Jewish people never possessed it all. The Jewish people today live in a very, very small part of the land that was given to them, but it's not all of the land. They live in a very, very small section of it. And so that's the reality today here in 2025. But in the future, they're going to possess all of the land. When God promised the land to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, Abraham never possessed all of it. He only had a very, very small part of it, and that was the land of Machpelah, and that's just because that's where he buried Sarah. And when God promised the land to Isaac, Isaac never possessed all of it. He owned a very, very small piece of it. Jacob, the same promise was given to him. God's like, hey, this land is yours, but Jacob never possessed it all. When you read about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you see that they were described as sojourners or as strangers in the land, and it was their land. They were strangers in their own land. That's a crazy concept, right? But there is a time coming where he is going to give the land to them, and he brings back up the Abrahamic covenant, and he's like, hey, you're going to go back into that land which I gave to their fathers. And so he is going to make good on that promise, because he hasn't done it yet. He is going to make good on that promise, and that is going to be fulfilled in the future. Ezekiel chapter 48 is your chapter to go to see how the land divisions are going to be divided during the Millennial Kingdom, because in this chapter you have all 12 tribes that are talked about, and it tells you the borders of each tribe that is going to be given their land. They're going to be given their allotments of the promised land, and that is going to be talked about in Ezekiel 48. But here is a visual for all of us, because during the Millennial Kingdom, this is what Ezekiel 48 is basically describing. You have Dan, Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Ephraim, Reuben, Judah, Benjamin, Simeon, Issachar, Zebulun, and Gad. And they are all over the place. But down here, you have this interesting this whited out area that is different than all of the other colors. And that is also described in the book of Ezekiel as well. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this is that in the whited out area here, you have the sanctuary there. That is going to be where the temple is going to be. And what's interesting about this map is that we see that Judah is on top and Benjamin is right beneath it. They are the two tribes that are the closest to where the Lord is going to be reigning from. And so why that's interesting is because why Judah and why Benjamin? How come it's not Dan? How come it's not Asher? How come it's not Naphtali? Why Judah and why Benjamin? Well, the reason is because if you guys remember back in the Old Testament, there was 12 tribes and they basically had a civil war among them. And they broke up. There was Jeroboam and Rehoboam, and 10 tribes went to the north, and that's what's referred to as the Northern Kingdom, which some people refer to as Ephraim. And then there are 2 tribes that remained south, and that is what is referred to as Judah, or the Southern Kingdom. Now, the tribes that stayed south were Judah and Benjamin. And so Judah and Benjamin stayed as close to the Lord, and they stayed right in Jerusalem, which is where the temple was. And so they were worshiping in the proper place. And so I believe that the reason why Judah and the reason why Benjamin are right next to where the temple is going to be, I believe that that is a privilege that God is giving to them because of their actions that they did back in the Old Testament. Now, if this is true, this is basically letting us know, as we already do know, that what we do on this earth matters. If you're a born again believer, what we are doing here matters. There is a reward that is given to us. And so this is also exemplified by here in this key down here. You see that the sons of Zadok are mentioned all the way down here, the sons of Zadok. The sons of Zadok were the ones who were loyal to the Lord, whereas the Levites, the other priests, the Levitical priesthood, they went astray and they were worshiping false gods and doing wrong things. And before the Levitical priesthood, they were working inside the temple, but during the Millennial Kingdom, the book of Ezekiel says that the Levitical priesthood, they're working outside the temple. So the Levitical priesthood is going to be working outside the temple during the Millennial Kingdom, but the sons of Zadok are going to be working inside the Millennial Temple. And so that is an absolute privilege, and it's a blessing. Why? It's because you are seeing who is getting closer to him, and it's an honor to be doing and serving the Lord, doing whatever we can for him. And so what we do on this earth matters, and that is given to us in the Old Testament. So I hope this helps in regards to how we view the future, because the Bible tells us this story, and it tells us that there is a right thing. And it's always important to understand that there is, even though there's a million different options out there that you can choose from, there is a right answer. Whatever you're working through right now in terms of theology or whatever, there is a right answer. We just need to search it. We need to study to show ourselves approved. I hope this helps.